Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to focus on two fundamental aspects of Dialogflow, and that is intents and contexts. Before we begin, I encourage you to utilize official resources for the Google Cloud Dialogflow docs. Make sure you will be referring to the official documents also in your chatbot creation process. Let's understand what intent is and what it does in Dialogflow. Intents help a chatbot understand what the user wants. Think of intents as the chatbot's way of recognizing a user's goal. When you say something to a chatbot, it figures out your intent, your as a user intent, and responds accordingly. For example, if you ask, "What's the weather today?" the chatbot understands your intent is to check the weather. Without intents, a chatbot wouldn't know how to help you. A well-trained chatbot can recognize multiple intents, making conversations smoother and more useful. Alongside intents, contexts are crucial for a chatbot's ability to handle a conversation intelligently. Contexts help the chatbot remember what has been discussed previously, avoid repetitions, and ensure relevance in responses. They are what make a chatbot's conversation flow feel more natural and engaging. In short, context control the flow of a conversation. They help the chatbot keep track of what has been discussed and decide what should come next. Now, we can see that there is input context and output context. What is an input and output context? Let's start with output context first. So, output context sets the stage for what happens next in a conversation. When a user interacts with a chatbot, their response can include output context, which means, "Hey, remember this topic for the next message." That's pretty much what the output context is. And what is an input context? Input context helps the chatbot understand follow-up messages correctly. Okay, now let's look at this diagram. This diagram represents the flow of a simple banking bot that allows users to check their checking and savings account balances and switch between these accounts. Each box you see represents an intent. As already mentioned, our banking bot will have several key functionalities. First, it will greet users and ask which account type they would like to access, checking or savings. Users will be able to view their account balances and seamlessly switch between the checking and the savings accounts. Let's talk about the intents that make this possible. We'll start with the account type inquiry intent, where the bot will prompt the user to choose between checking or savings accounts, uh, with responses tailored to guide them effectively. For the checking balance intent, our bot will recognize commands like checking or my checking account and provide the account balance with an option to do more, such as switching to the savings account. The key here is how we use context to keep the conversation relevant and flowing. Each intent will pass specific context information to the next, ensuring the bot understands the stage of the conversation. Now let's look at the switch to savings intent. This intent allows users to switch their inquiry from checking to savings account. Input context here, which is checking in info. It requires input context checking info context, meaning it can only be triggered if the user was previously discussing their checking account. Upon triggering, it sets the savings info context, directing the conversation toward the savings account balance. Now look at switch to checking intent. This intent enables users to switch from savings to checking inquiries. It activates when the savings info context is present, indicating the user was dealing with their savings account. It sets the checking info context, switching the focus back to the checking account. The lifespan of a context is critical because it determines how many turns of the conversation the context will stay active. If the lifespan expires, the chatbot may no longer remember relevant details of the conversation, which could lead to a breakdown in communication. In summary, each intent and its associated input and output context work together to create a smooth and logical conversation flow. By managing contexts and their lifespans effectively, we ensure that our banking bot can handle user requests intelligently and efficiently.